Hello, gamers. It's me. It's been a little bit, a couple weeks, in fact. Today's video is about, go figure, I've got to talk about nanoweave again. And I've got to talk about nanoweave again because one of my friends, well, someone I would consider a friend, or at least an acquaintance, a friendly acquaintance that I've made in the game over the years. Shrimp, he's a UK player. He streams from time to time. He did a 6-hour stream yesterday, which is kind of out of the blue and weird. But it's good to see him coming back and playing the game again. And he had a lot of people in the chat, and some normal people, some weird I hate Lex people in the chat. And one of those I hate Lex people in the chat brought up the fact that why doesn't Lex get more criticism for his advocating for the removal of nanoweave armor? Now, I don't know any, it's some random fucking no content, whatever, throwaway Twitch account guy. But I have heard that a little bit, and I think, but not as much as you might expect. So I think the guy brings up a good point, at least at the baseline of, why haven't I gotten a bunch of criticism for that? Because there's a lot of people who don't like me because I call them out for being shitters, which most of them are, or people that have played the game for 5 minutes and want to talk about game balance, or the 5, 6, 7 years too late, retarded, shitter, 2KD, perma-stuck players. I make fun of those people, and I always have. And just my existence to makes them irrationally angry. So yeah, why haven't I really haven't gotten a lot of criticism from that. I think most people that actually follow me and watch my content, and I've talked about nanoweave a lot, especially since the removal. Since the removal, I think I've had to get into discussion about nanoweave probably like in 5 or 6 videos since then. So nanoweave was removed in the Arsenal update, and almost right away, I wasn't happy with the execution of how they did it. And that's pretty well documented here. So if you're going to complain about my takes on the game, yet also you don't watch any of my content or understand any of my points, or just try to straw man me all the time, like, I see that you're mad, but you're just wasting your time. And the people, you look really fucking stupid to people who actually understand my point of view on this thing. But once and for all, crystal clear, so you don't have to go back and find it, because in some places it's buried or it comes up randomly. So once and for all, I'm going to detail it right fucking here in this specific video. So if you are that stupid or lazy or, disingenuous, you can come right to this video and understand what I'm talking about when it comes to nanoweave and the removal of it, and why it's not really appropriate to levy a bunch of shit on me or, rake me over the fire for pushing this for so long. It's pretty well documented why I wanted it removed. The time to kill, there was a lot of issues with it in general. When you have a pretty much no-brainer, you probably should use this because it's just that strong type of thing in the game. Yeah, it's probably needs some kind of balance change or something. Now, we saw some attempted balance changes with it. And one of the biggest problems here with the whole nanoweave thing is was Rel. Because when you have a guy who doesn't understand really, really basic shit about FPS games, because down to the brass tacks of it, guys, and one of my biggest complaints about our former lead game designer is he's not an FPS player. He's not an FPS player. I don't even know how you would describe him, but when it comes to understanding really basic things, there's a catalog of retarded, stupid takes that guy has made over the years that we've been making fun of him for saying shit since probably 2013 or so. So with this entire catalog, you have this repository of takes from someone about an FPS game or FPS games that no one that actually understands what the fuck is going on would ever make. And that was Rel. So I always enjoyed Rel going on interviews and stuff, because almost every interview he went on, he would drop 1, 2, or 3 gems of, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And realistically, with the gunplay thing, this kind of started in, I guess 2017 or so, when he was doing when he did the AR and LMG damage drop-off thing. Because he wanted... It never made sense to me, and I've talked about this before on the channel, but ARs and carbines didn't drop off, 2 tiers like... Or ARs and LMGs didn't drop off 2 tiers like carbines for a particular reason that made sense to most people, because, carbines are on LA specifically, and that's a class that can go anywhere, pretty much anywhere very easily. Now, you guys complain about, oh, well, you can wall jump as heavy. Well, dude, wall jumping is not the same as an on-demand go-anywhere jetpack. It's not even fucking close, okay? But yeah, so for carbines to fall off 2 tiers compared to the other weapons, which only fell off 1, it made sense in multiple different ways. Because when you have a class that can go anywhere, you don't want that class that can go anywhere to also have the same reach, right? We saw this problem with LA with the Seeker crossbow. Because when you give a class that can go anywhere also the ability to reach out and fucking touch people really hard at range, and I'm not saying carbines hit really hard at range, but them having 2 tiers of drop was perfectly fine, and it made perfect sense. So I guess it really started there. And Rel could never really figure out how... Rel could never really figure out how to make the long-range automatics not just feel worse in general. And a lot of the reason why the long-range automatics feel worse in general is, like, take the damage models in this game. As you go up in damage models in the automatics, you also incur higher spread values, because that's how BC2 was balanced. The higher your damage model, the bigger your base spread, the bigger your spread increase per shot, shit like that. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that, but it makes some sense. But at the same time, it also leaves you in a position where the weapons that do higher damage models and fall off to higher damage models inherently have more inaccuracy with them, which, if you're trying to shoot people at range, is kind of a bad thing. So you see, generally people would stick to using stuff that was more... they would generally use lower damage models with generally more good feeling and accurate guns to shoot at people at range, because that's... Why would you use the stuff that... And the majority... One of the things that Rel never understood either was the majority... I don't know if he doesn't have the telemetry or what, but the ranges that are relevant in PlanetSide 2 are not that far. So trying to push a whole bunch of guns or try to have a whole subsection of guns that excel or are really good at ranges that occur or are relevant maybe 5 to 10% of the time is kind of a huge fucking waste of time. But of course, naturally, he doesn't understand this. So yeah. So what you saw over time was things like battle rifles. Since we couldn't figure out how to, and I actually suggested a change for this. It's in a very old video that I did. I think it's titled "Making Automatics Not Suck at Range." I did it a long time ago. I think like 2017 or 2018 I did that video. But those changes essentially that left ranged automatics, with generally a 2-bullet difference between themselves and what you would use for more CQC or building fights. Because as the game stood, and for the most part, if your ranged weapon only ends up killing one bullet faster at huge distances, while also being less versatile in the ranges that happen the most, and less forgiving when it comes to spread mechanics, and in some cases some recoil mechanics, yeah, that would make way more fucking sense than whatever he went down into. Now, Rel pretty much, I think, gave up on trying to make ranged automatics not be completely pointless and useless. So instead what he did was he decided to start buffing the fuck out of battle rifles and all the long guns. And there was a Reddit post, I think yesterday, that kind of goes into this. The long, slow power creep of long guns, battle rifles, SLRs, stuff like that. SLRs, I'm talking about BF1. But anyway, the long range semi-autos that have huge higher end damage models. So basically we got to a point with Rel over time where, yeah, don't want to shoot at people, you can't learn in the game, you don't want to shoot at people with the long range automatics, then here you go. Here's an extremely low skill alternative that performs way, way, way better than shooting people at automatics at range. So yeah, these things were buffed over and over and over and over again. And it all pretty much comes to a head when, which the point of this video is, we get around to the nanoweave removal. So nanoweave was removed last year during the Arsenal update, and at the end of the day, it felt like kind of a throw-in at the end, because the things that needed to happen... Now, I've never advocated for... When I advocated for nanoweave removal, my take on it was never... If you just remove nanoweave, the game is better. I've heard that shit thrown in my face over and over again over time. Like, that's not ever what I said. And I really wish people would stop strawmanning me with that. I never said that. I never said that the game would be perfect and fixed if you just removed nanoweave. I use this thing called nuance, which most of you guys are too stupid to understand because you're casual fucking moron gamers. The nuance here is we have to remove nanoweave, but then there's a whole bunch of shit, or not even really that much. A lot of people used to say if you remove nanoweave, you have to rebalance every weapon in the game. And I would say, no, that's not true. You don't have to touch any of the automatics in the game. The nanoweave removal is great for automatics, especially 167s and 200, though God forbid fucking the NC needs another buff in some way, of course. But anyway, yeah, pretty much everything above the Gauss saw model of damage, so everything above 200, so that's starting to get into your 250s, your 334s, for your semi-autos and stuff like that. All of that needed to be normalized to pre or post nanoweave world. That's just the way it would work. The same thing with shotguns. All of the shotguns in the game needed a flat 20% damage nerf after that. Shotguns, SLRs, basically anything semi-auto that still does a shit ton of damage. Yeah. And the auto shotguns, of course. I don't see anyone really using auto shotguns anymore. They're probably pretty bad. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen anybody using them. So when a shitter stops using that shotgun, I just assume that they can't use it anymore. They think it's bad. But whatever. So anyway, yeah, there were a subset. You have the semi-autos that do a big, huge chunk of damage. All shotguns. Not heavy pumps, not just heavy pumps. Like, no. All shotguns, if it shoots a pellet, it gets 20% reduction in damage, flat off the top. And max infantry weapons. Boom. So when you did your little stupid max nerf patch, which was total bullshit, you nerfed the headshot mod. Okay. Yeah, they needed to lose 20% off the body shot damage too. IMO. So it's just that little bit of stuff right there. So no, you don't, and that's not even the majority of the weapons in the game. The majority of the weapons in the game are automatic. So if you just have to take 20% off the top of, I don't know, battle rifles and shotguns and max AI weapons, Not that much work, not that big a deal. I mean, if you want your change, if you want the nanoweave removal to be cohesive and make sense in any way, because I wouldn't say, I think automatics without nanoweave, the game, it feels fine, but it's just everything else. So again, Rel goes into it. I don't know why he chose to listen, at least to do that. My thinking is probably the only thing that people like him that are as stupid as him when it comes to these games see is the suit slot diversity. And that's the number one thing casuals bring up when you talk about nanoweave and nanoweave removal, is it's all about the suit slot diversity, because these guys can't get over the fact that their suit slot, when it's not reducing damage by 20%, other than that, doesn't really make that much fucking difference in the game. You're not playing some in-depth action RPG game. It's not that deep, guys. That's why most good players can log in on characters that have really nothing and shit on you just the same, and you watch these retards go back to the fucking spawn screen and switch their implants every fucking time they die, or switch their suit slot every time they die. That's the kind of player that fixates and focuses on things that are irrelevant when it comes to the FPS gunplay and combat in the game. So yeah, there's some nuance to that, right? But of course, when you have a lead game designer who doesn't understand really basic things, and you can't even say he wasn't told about this, because I know specifically people, friends of mine, I would assume are friends, or that we're on the same page here, directly spoke to the guy and submitted the feedback that indicated that this was a thing that needed to happen as well. But as I've alluded to in previous videos, the Rel Processor 9000 doesn't take into account any of that feedback for whatever reason it is. Now, I've talked about recently, I mentioned, I think in the last video, that our mistake here in pushing for that, or my mistake in general, was assuming that Rel would act in good faith and for that change, which he did not. When you make that change, when you remove nanoweave from the game while simultaneously making all the guns in the game, or most of the guns in the game, more accurate, buffing shotguns, like literally buffing the weapons that need to be nerfed simultaneously as you do the nanoweave change, now I can see that you are not dealing in good faith. And so all my efforts to actually improve the game are shit on by someone who specifically only cares about trying to buff shitters and decrease or eliminate whatever skill gap is left in the game. Because honestly, that's when you do that, when you remove nanoweave and simultaneously buff the weapons that need to be nerfed while you're doing this, they need to be nerfed while you're doing it for this change to make cohesive sense in your game. When you do that, all you're doing is arbitrarily fucking buffing the shit out of all the guns that require less ability to use in the game. And that is essentially a skill gap compression tool. So when I talk about Arsenal Update as a failure, that's what I'm pointing to primarily. Arsenal Update was a huge Rel's last gasp at a skill gap compression patch. And it's very frustrating. And looking back on it, I think I was probably a little naive, I guess, to expect that someone as retarded and ignorant and clueless as Rel is and was would, deal in good faith and make a comprehensive change, or the changes that needed to go with the removal to make his patch make sense. But he wasn't interested in that. He was looking for a fucking fast, cheap, quick way to buff shitters against good players. And ultimately, at the end of the day, with the nanoweave removal, I don't really think it's the end of the world. I mean, if you guys can't play the game now because nanoweave is gone, or you're significantly suffering, then I don't really know what to tell you. Most of it, I guess, is from these awful 2KD, I'm perpetually stuck 10 years in the game at 2KD and fucking 800 IVI, and nanoweave made a huge difference in... Look, if you're actually a good player, then it doesn't really make that much difference at the end of the day. and you'll still be able to farm shitters. It's more annoying, and you will certainly, your stats will see, or for the most part, your KDs will see a regression, but not really that bad, if I'm honest. You can still log into the game and farm shitters because, as Rel never could process or understand, no matter how much skill gap compression you put in the game, when your game fundamentally does not attract people who are interested in improving or playing FPS games in the first place, and they have to go up against the fucking dogs that were in the game or the dogs that are still in the game, it's not going to be good for them. And they're going to get the fuck farmed out of their brains and asses still. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't make that much difference. But if you had any idea what the fuck you were talking about, or if you knew what my stance on it actually was, you wouldn't say dumb shit like, why doesn't Lex get more shit for nanoweave removal? At the end of the day, man, if we had been dealing with an honest lead game designer whose sole mission wasn't to make the game easier for shitters at all costs and eroding the entire game and ruining the game and making it worse year after year, if we weren't dealing with that person, it could have gone another way. And there's still time, maybe, probably not, but there's still time to do the things that you could have done. I mean, we saw the heavy pump shotgun nerf 7-8 months later, and that should have been the huge red flag for everybody. Why the fuck did it take you 7 or 8 months to understand that these things needed to be normalized? And once again, Rel. That's why. Because very basic things that almost anyone, as I've sat here and explained to you guys my thought process here and how we balance this stuff and go through with the change, it probably makes sense to you. But the problem is, it didn't make sense to the guy in charge of the game. And most common sense things didn't make sense to that guy. So good fucking riddance again, because every time I have to talk about this and talk about the last 2 years of the game, we have to wade through this puddle of shit from a guy who was just cluelessly out of touch with reality of his own game. And where did that get him? Where did fucking destroying and trying to destroy the skill gap, where did that get him? Oh, that's right. He's collecting unemployment checks trying to revolutionize Valheim. Good fucking job. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. So yeah, if you want to go around, like I said before in previous videos, if you go around and talk shit about me, I'm going to find out, and then I'm going to blow you up somewhere at some point. Like I said, most people are not as stupid as you are, but if you want to attack my takes and come after me, at least fucking understand what my takes are and what my thinking is on the subject. At least do that much.